Hey everybody, it's Cody Kessler coming to you live for this episode of KLA Now. We're here in Rockville, Maryland at the Rockville office of Homebridge Financial Services. Today's topic, we are going to be talking about how do I know if it makes sense to refinance. There's an enormous amount of refinance activity because of what's happened globally from an economic standpoint. And so everybody on the planet is talking about how low mortgage rates are and whether or not they should refinance. And so a lot of the times as we're going through an analysis with a client and we're talking to them about how to refinance, we're able to educate them that there is actually a process to doing this. And the process puts them in control. It's actually for your best interest to know how to do this. So that's what we wanted to talk about today. Today's conversation is going to start with how did we get to where we are? And how did the market end up putting us in a position where we're at 3-year mortgage rate lows? And that would be, if you haven't lived under a rock in the last week, you've heard about the Brexit vote, which is where Britain has voted in a referendum to stay or leave in the EU. And last Thursday, they voted to leave the EU. This sent global markets spiraling down. You saw the pound dropping drastically. You saw other emerging currencies dropping drastically. Some which are more stable currencies have actually made gains, such as the Swiss franc. When you're looking at these things, what does that mean? That means that we've seen the Dow Jones drop almost 1,000 points. However, where we are currently today is that those markets, the concerns have actually eased considerably. Stock market has rebounded considerably from where we are. And what that means is that mortgage rates, while yes, they are still at lows, as everybody has always said, these are windows. They're quick, sharp windows of opportunity that if you want to take advantage of them, you do have to move quickly, but don't be sold. Don't allow the mortgage company to sell you on this. Know the information, looking at what these things are, and having the power so that you're not relying upon the mortgage lender is extremely important. And so again, that's what we want to talk about today, but just follow that information. All you have to do is Google this. You can find out what mortgage-backed securities are doing. You can find out what the equity markets are doing or what the stocks are doing. And just a quick lesson, mortgages, which are a bond, it's a security, trades inversely of equities. So when stock market's going up, bonds are going down essentially from a price standpoint, which means rates are going up with the stock market, okay? So again, stock market goes up, interest rates are going up with it because the bonds are selling off. So in this situation where we are right now, we've seen the bond market kind of settle itself out. Still, rates are low, great time to refinance. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of today's conversation. And let's talk about how does this all work and how do I know if it makes sense? So let's start with what most mortgage companies do when they're talking about a refinance. And they start talking to you about a rate reduction. They start talking about how much money can you save. And that's fantastic. Everybody wants the lowest rate possible. Everybody wants to save money. But just because you're saving money doesn't necessarily mean that the refinance transaction is good for you, okay? So let's talk about how you can make sure that it is. First, no mortgage company on the planet can tell you whether any amount of monthly payment savings actually makes sense for you. How could they? So they don't know anything about your budget. They don't know anything about you personally. All they know is the more that they can convince people to refinance, the more money they make. So guys, they are naturally incentivized to tell you that yes, this makes sense for you. However, you want to make sure that you are not just being sold on what's good for them. So the first thing that you want to do is take the rate and take the monthly payment savings, kind of put it on the side for just a second. And let's talk about what actually a mortgage company can legitimately recommend. This is what's called a break-even point, okay? So if I take and I have a transaction, which a mortgage transaction has closing costs, every single one does, and let's just take an average number of $3,000 for that transaction. And I have a monthly payment savings of $200 per month, okay? Well, what you want to do is you take that 200, you divide it into the cost of the transaction, and whatever that number is how many months it's going to take in order to actually start saving that $200, because you have a cost of $3,000. It's not free to do the transaction. You save $200 a month. How long does it take you to actually start saving money because you spent $3,000? So hopefully this makes sense to everybody. If you're saving $100 a month, obviously you're extending out that break even. A national average on a refinance transaction is about 3.5 years before your break even allows you to start saving money. That's a pretty long time, 3.5 years. So we here at KLA feel that that's actually way too long. We don't recommend any transaction unless the break even is 24 months or less. If it's less than 18 months, we actually really do feel it's something that you should strongly look at. If it's less than 12 months, really, it's a no-brainer. However, there's another piece to this puzzle. How long are you going to be staying in that property? Because think about it like this. If you have a break even of 24 months, but you're moving out in a year, does that transaction really make sense for you? Obviously, the answer is no. Even then, if you're staying in the property for 3 or 4 years and your break even is 24 months, that's not up to anybody other than you to decide whether this makes sense or not. But if you take what I've just said and you break it down from a reality standpoint, that's a mathematical equation. It's math, it's true, it's an absolute. And that is actually something that a mortgage company can talk to you about with integrity, because there's no smoke and mirrors, there's no way to play, any tricks or anything like that. It's just, this is how much the cost is, this is how much you're saving, divide it into it, and you can see how quickly you are breaking even on the transaction. So that is how you, the consumer, will be able to tell whether this is good or not. Now, there are other circumstances that you might come up with, such as a cash out transaction. I need to take home, equity out of my home to do renovations or do debt consolidation. That really does change it, because now you're not talking about rate and term refinancing where you can compare something apples to apples. Now you're talking about an opportunity cost. And if you have to take cash out, well, then you really can't compare the old payment to the new payment. The cost of the transaction is just something that you can compare lender to lender, really. Take about, going from a 30-year fixed to a 15-year mortgage. Again, very difficult to compare those two, but if you're looking to get into a 15-year mortgage, obviously that is a different scenario. So it's again, you as the consumer need to sit down and think about, is this what's best for me? Side note, if you're looking at a 15-year fixed, a lot of mortgage companies advertise this because it obviously carries a lower interest rate than a 30-year mortgage. So they put that out there and they talk about it. I see it all the time. I see it on Facebook. It's, convert into a 15-year, save money, save interest. That's true. But you also have to understand that a 15-year mortgage carries a much larger payment. And that payment you are tied to. So here's a strategy, a piece of advice real quick. If you take a 30-year mortgage, and these are hypothetical numbers that I'm just kind of pulling out of the air, take a 30-year mortgage with a $1,500 a month payment and a 15-year mortgage with a $3,000 a month mortgage payment. If you look at this mathematically, if you were to take that 30-year mortgage and make a $3,000 a month payment, meaning that you're putting an extra $1,500 in principal on top every month, you actually pay that 30-year mortgage off in just about 15.5 years. So you can get to the same point, okay? But the great thing about that is you have flexibility. At any given month, you don't have to put that extra $1,500 in. You can drive that somewhere else. And that's what I actually like to preach, is the flexibility piece, because nobody really knows what's going to happen in, a year from now, 5 years from now, anything like that. So I love that tip right there. It's a great one. When anybody calls me up and they're asking me about a 15-year mortgage, my first question is, why do you want that and what are you trying to accomplish with it? It's not just, hey, let's talk about a great low rate, you can save lots of interest, because it really doesn't work that way. So let's talk about some tips that I've got. And the first one that I would say is, if you're refinancing, you want to start with your current lender. Who's holding that mortgage? Give them a call, find out what they have. You know how they operate, unless you've been transferred to that person, or at least go back to the last loan officer if you were happy with them and start there. It's a great place to look because simply you know how they do business. You know, if you don't have anybody that you know, reach out to a friend, ask them, get a really good referral, but ask that person why you liked them. You know, I get referrals all the time. I'm sitting around talking with my friends and go, hey, you got to call this guy. He's great. Well, how do you know what their level of greatness is? They could be great, but they don't really know what great is. So ask them. That's a great point for anything, or anytime you get a referral. Why did you like them? What did you like about them? So the next tip, there's tons of mail that goes out to people, especially with FHA, VA, government loans. You know, and I'm not real big on this because, you know, you got to ask yourself, where are these people getting my information from? How do they have what my loan amount is? How do they know where, you know, when I got this loan? And a lot of times they're getting this information in a less than ethical way. So you really want to question, do I want to do business with them from the beginning? So if you're responding to mail, read the mail. Oftentimes, and I know this for a fact, we get phone calls from people all the time that say, hey, Cody, we just got a letter in the mail and we wanted to know, you know, why you sent it to us. And we never sent them that piece of mail. It came from another company who sent a piece of mail acting as if they are Homebridge Mortgage, Homebridge Financial Services. So it's extremely misleading. Know what you're doing. And if you're out there watching, listen, we would really love it. Ask questions. You know, we can have the answers, the questions answered live to you, so we really encourage it. On to the next tip. Guys, don't rush these transactions. Take them slow. Treat them with the same amount of respect that you do a purchase transaction. We understand that there's not a contract, but they're just as important as a purchase transaction. You want to make sure that you're looking at the numbers the right way. You don't want to just jump into it because somebody promises you a great rate or a great fee, because there's lots of companies that still will pull smoke and mirrors, bait and switch tactics, and that's not something that I would suggest that anybody would want to fall for. Don't get sold, guys. And what I mean by that is I see it all the time. I hear it all the time. You know, loan officers that work for companies, and a lot of it has to do with internet lenders. An internet lender is designed to make the phone ring. They don't have experienced loan officers on the other end of that phone ready to actually give you financial advice. They're only trained to quote you an interest rate as quickly as they can. Sometimes they don't even legitimately give you a closing cost worksheet. They send it to you in an email, and they're designed to sell you on things like move now, the interest rate is only available for the next 30 minutes, hour, things like that. Guys, that's just not true. The market does trade just like the stock market, minute by minute, hour by hour. But if you understand what the market's doing, then you have the power. You've taken the power away from the mortgage lender, and you are the one that's saying, listen, I know where we are right now. I don't see any news that's going to come out that's going to change what the market's doing in the next hour. So why are you selling me? If somebody's trying to sell you into a transaction, again, good indicator that it's time to stand up, shake hands, and run the other way. Move with a sense of urgency, but don't rush. Okay, and when I say move with a sense of urgency, you want to make a quick decision because the market can get away from you pretty quickly. But also, if you're talking about doing a refinance transaction in a 30-day period of time or a 45-day period of time, you got to get your documents together. When the lender asks you for things, your disclosures, you got to get them back to them in a timely fashion so that they can keep moving. Guys, it's lenders work on a logistical time frame. So if you eat into that time frame, it's not like they can just go, oh, you know what? Hey, I'm going to take this loan and put it to the front of the line. It doesn't work that way. Oftentimes, the client is the one that delays the transaction, and delays can lead to extension fees and the market moving and a rate lock extension getting missed. Really, actually, some bad things can come out of that. I don't want to see you in that situation. Here's a great piece of advice. Every lender, when they put these worksheets together, they're basing it off of representations. They're basically putting out, hey, you told me what you owe. You told me what you think your house is worth. So here's an interest rate. Here's a structure. Let's kind of move forward. And then after they get these things done, they pull your credit. They get all the documents to see if you're qualified. And then they pull an appraisal. All of these things can obviously make your deal change considerably from what they sold you on. So don't get your heart set on anything until you get your credit pulled, until you give your documents and they know how that you actually qualify, and that your appraisal comes back and the structure of the deal can be closed the way that you thought. So just know that lots of things can change unless the lender is doing this amount of due diligence on the front end. Zillow is not an appraisal, guys. So Zillow has been known to be off anywhere between 10%. I think I actually just read something the other day on Facebook that the owner, the CEO of Zillow, sold his house for 40% less than what it said on Zillow. So funny tip right there. Guys, make your lender walk through your closing cost numbers with you in great detail. Sending an email and just saying, hey, here's the worksheet, let me know if you have any questions, unacceptable. Walk through these numbers. I know that maybe you've been through it a couple times, but things change in the lending world. How numbers are presented to you. Make your lender walk through them. They get paid lots of money to do what they do. The least that they can do is spend 15, 20 minutes walking you through that worksheet to make sure that you understand the numbers, that you're comfortable with the numbers, and that you want to move forward. Don't base your final decision as to whether or not you should be refinancing or not based upon monthly payment savings or how much your interest rate is reduced. There's this theory that walks around on this planet that every lender says if the interest rate drops by about 0.25%, then it's worth refinancing. Again, guys, I go back to square one. Interest rate payment savings, yes, it's great and it's an important piece of it, but the break even is what you should be making a financial decision on, because those two numbers, the interest rate and the payment savings, they are arbitrary and they are opinionated, meaning does it make sense to you, not the lender, okay? You can then see that break even. It's black and white, it's cut and dry, it's mathematical, it's the best way that you can protect yourself. So those are my tips. Do we have any questions? We got one today, all right. What about lenders offering no closing costs? So guys, there's no free money. And I'm sure that anybody who's watching knows that there is nothing free in life. So what you want to do is when you're talking to a lender and they're either offering no closing cost options, really what you want to know is who's paying for it. Am I paying for it or is the lender paying for it? Because there isn't a no closing cost option. There's no way to refinance and nobody is charging you any fees. It's just not possible. You've got title insurance, you've got title companies that are going to do the closing, lenders have appraisals, they've got all kinds of stuff. So it's not a matter of are there closing costs or not, it's a matter of who's paying for it. So if that's an interesting option for you, what you want to do is you want to start with the lender and say, listen, quote me your market rate. I don't want any credits. I want to know where you are in the market as a flat base rate. Once you see that, then you can go back and ask that lender, well, what would it be if you were to cover all my closing costs? Meaning, give me a credit for that. Then you can actually see how much it affects the interest rate, how much it goes up from a baseline, because that's how you want to be able to compare lenders. You want to be able to compare base market rate to base market rate. You can go on Wells Fargo, Bank of America, all of these websites and basically see this is what we're offering with or without points, whatever it may be, but they're not going to say, here's how much it is with no closing costs. So smoke and mirrors, it really is, know what you're getting into, because the more informed you are, the more that you can actually make the bank work for you rather than the other way around. So guys, hopefully this has been great information. Like us, share us. The more information. Oh, we have another question?
Skipping a payment.
Skipping a payment. Again, smoke and mirrors, guys. When you refinance, you do not skip a payment. This is the number one myth that loan officers tell people to try to convince them how great of an idea that this is. So when you close on a mortgage, mortgages are paid, the interest is paid in arrears. So when you close at the end of a month, you have a payoff that is going to be higher than what you see as the principal balance on your mortgage statement. It's going to be by that full month of interest. So that month of interest is your next month's mortgage payment. So in this case, basically somebody closes at the end of June, their closing costs include their July 1st mortgage payment. So why would you want to roll that into your mortgage? Why would you want to increase your loan amount to cover your monthly mortgage payment so that you can set up your new escrows and everything else? Doesn't make any sense. So unless you are saying, I can't or don't have the financial wherewithal to make my next monthly mortgage payment, there is no way that you should be bringing any less than what your normal monthly mortgage payment is to the table. If a loan officer is recommending that, one, they don't know finance. Two, they don't have your best interest at heart. And three, if you're in that much financial strife that you can't make your monthly mortgage payment and you need to roll that in, we should be having another conversation about restructuring your total monthly debt, not just, hey, can I refinance? The next thing is, guys, you're going to get your escrows back if you currently have an escrow account. So that's another. You're going to get that back federally. It's mandated within 30 days, but usually it's about 2 to 3 weeks. So that's another that if you've got $2,000 sitting in your escrow account, why would you want to, again, take a higher loan amount when you're going to get that money back? So these are, little things. That is just smoke and mirrors. You do not skip a monthly mortgage payment. It is used by, poor salesmanship from used car salesmen, loan officers that really don't understand finance, and really they're just trying to make the transaction look a whole lot easier for you to just say yes. So, as I said before, like us on Facebook here, share these videos, share them with as many people that you like. This is all great information that people need to know. This is the kind of thing the mortgage industry doesn't want you to know about, because it means that you're getting information that makes it more difficult for them to sell you on something. So, again, we always appreciate we appreciate you watching. We appreciate the support. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next time on KLA Now.